Hello again from Explosive Edge Athletics in Edina, Minnesota. I'm Sean Michigan. I'm coming to you today in regards to the next installment of our Improve Your Jump Training Performance Through Your Jump Technique Tips series that we're doing here on YouTube. Now, if you haven't seen the last installment, I definitely suggest that you check it out. What we did was we talked about the importance of finding the correct foot placement and having that to dictate how you were going to develop force to the ground, from the ground on up. Well, we're going to go the next joint up and hit that knee joint and try to see exactly what types of knee angles are going to be optimal for you in your individual jump performance. Now, there's definitely importance, and it seems somewhat intuitively obvious again, when we look at knee angle and how that will dictate and determine our actual jumping performance. First off, that knee angle is going to determine our working conditions at the start of that push-off or concentric action that is going to take place. And if that is importance and that's what's dictating it, it will also then determine the degree of certain muscle contributions, such as specifically at the quadricep, as well as in timing of certain muscle groups and the way that they're developing force. We know that in vertical jump performance, force will be developed from a proximal to distal type fashion. And not only that, but because it's happening before the actual concentric or push-off phase, we know that it will also really dictate what's going to happen on that eccentric action. And therefore, it'll also determine how much stress shortening cycle potentiation effect we will get from that eccentric action, as well as the amount of eccentric or elastic energy storage that we can get in not only the muscle, but also the tendon as well. We know that when someone has a quick, rapid pre-stretch, that the muscle spindle, which is taking place in every single muscle fiber, is sending signals back to the brain in regards to the degree of that rate and the magnitude of the stretch. Notice the magnitude side in there. So if we try to go over too long a range of motion, or it takes place over too long a period of time, then we won't get very much contribution from a stress shortening cycle standpoint. And therefore the movement on the concentric action becomes very mechanical in nature and therefore not very efficient. Now, what will our knee angle, if it is so important, we obviously need to take a lot of time in order to figure out what is right for you and what is right for someone else, because it's going to be very individualistic in nature. It will be dictated first and foremost on the constraints based on certain positions that are going to be typical for the vertical jumping that's going to be performed in your sport. Now, if you're simply someone who's an enthusiast, a trainee, trying to increase their pure vertical jump performance, whether it be from a standing vertical jump or a running more dynamic style, then this becomes very important, but it's based primarily on your individual strengths and weaknesses. So it's important to not only know, but understand, number one, the way that your body develops force, and number two, your own personal jump style. Now, if you don't know your own personal jump style, that's okay, but I definitely suggest you do some research in regards to what would indicate the distinction between different jump styles. There's essentially two of them, as categorized by a guy that's very well known on the internet in regards to vertical jump performance, and that's a guy by the name of Kelly Baggett, who's a terrific vertical jump mind. He's written a lot of stuff in regards to a strength and power jumper versus an elastic reactive jumper. I myself have written a number of articles in regards to this specific topic as well. So I would suggest that you definitely check out information from either Kelly or myself and try to determine what is going to dictate if you are a strength and power jumper or an elastic reactive style of jumper. But on a nutshell, on a basic level, a strength and power jumper is going to jump getting down to greater degrees of range of motion. So they're going to have greater knee flexion, and they're going to be much more efficient getting to that knee flexion, simply because they are more reliant on concentric power production. The elastic and reactive jumper, on the other hand, is going to be more of that springy, bouncy type of athlete that you see. So they're going to have quicker, faster, shorter ranges of motion on their eccentric. So they're going to go to less degrees of range of motion at that knee, so less flexion, and they're going to be more efficient in that style. Now, it's not to say that one is better than the other. They both have their strengths and weaknesses, but it's definitely important that you find out where your optimal knee angle should be. Research from a theoretical standpoint with computer simulation models, which would just basically be the most optimal computer simulation that we can get based on what we know with science and physics, will usually tell us that the knee flexion is going to be optimal for the majority of individuals is going to be anywhere from this 100 degrees up to about 120 to 130 and knee flexion here. But it's going to be anywhere across the board, again, dependent on your individual strengths and weaknesses. Myself being an extreme strength and power jumper, I get closer in between 90 to 100. So 90 degrees here to 100 there is usually where my counter movement will end and my push-off phase will begin. That being said, we don't want to, if you are a strength and power jumper, you don't want to try to emulate what an elastic reactive jumper's knee angles will be, because you won't optimize your specific jump performance. But once we find the position that is optimal for us, and we need to first and foremost start practicing that position if it's a position or a jump style that we haven't done before, number one. Number two, with that new working amplitude, so to say, so the dynamics of the force that's taking place based on that degree of accentuated region of force production, we need to start working that angle specifically. And there's two ways that we can do that. The first one being through the use of isometrics and pure isometric training. We can do that first and foremost if we were to do a jump style, and I'll just go on the side here for you. If I was going to do more of a quasi-isometric, I can do a long duration iso where I just hold here for a long period of time. It's quasi-isometric because I'm not pushing up against anything. I could be changing degrees of tension there as I hold longer or shorter. So I can do a long duration iso like that. In that same jump style or in the same type of position, if this is my knee angle again that I'm assuming, I can have someone behind me pushing pressure down at my center of mass or even at my shoulders. If you're a coach or trainer and you're working with females, you probably don't want to be grabbing them here at your hips. You could be pushing, standing on a box, pushing down on the shoulders, and forcing someone to resist up against your partner's external resistance. Or you could even do it in like a mid-isometric, mid-thigh pull like I'm about to show you here, where you're going to assume that same foot stance based on what we talked about in our last video, how that is always important to try and simulate that. And we're just going to pull up against the rack as hard as humanly possible here. Notice that we can obviously adjust the rack depending on where our exact angles need to be. Now, the biggest thing with isometrics though, however, is that the nervous system can get burnt out very, very rapidly because it really stimulates that nervous system to kind of work on overload. So, according to old Soviet Union recommendations, we would only want to do that about 10% of our overall training volume. And we definitely want to cycle or periodize those isometrics in and out of our training in the exact same fashion. So there's other ways that we can definitely work towards increasing that working amplitude of that knee angle that we have now found to be our new working amplitude for our jump performance. And we can do that through special physical preparation type strength training. We can find the angle, we can do things in order to teach the body to produce the most amount of force at the specific instant of transfer from that degree of angle. So we can start to squat down to this position and perform our barbell squats there. We can do all of our jumping there, of course. We can even do things such as our deadlifts down to that knee angle, of course, along with that accompanying foot position, and with that we determined from the last video. So everything is about developing a greater working condition and changing the way that our body develops force simply based on our individual strengths and weaknesses. So the knee angle and that issue of that degree of flexion or extension, depending on which way you look at it, will be one of the main determining factors towards us being able to increase our jump performance and optimize that through our technique. Again, if you didn't see last time's video, definitely take a peek at that because we're working from the ground on up. For session 2, Sean Mishka, Explosive Edge Athletics, that's a wrap on this one, and we'll see you again next time.